Welcome back to the morning show, still here on Arise News. The likely economic implication of executing the $9.6 billion judgment debt against Nigeria is still being discussed, in hushed tones mostly around the political circles. But for a more robust understanding of the technicalities involved in the gas supply and purchase agreement, which midwifed the ill-fated deal, we are now being joined by Dr. Godswill Ihetu, a former Group Executive Director, Engineering and Technical, Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, a former Managing Director of the Nigeria Gas Company, and also former Managing Director of the Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Company. Dr. Ihetu, a lot of experience there.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Well, you are welcome to the morning show.
Thank you.
I mean, many Nigerians hear about this $9.6 billion debt, which even Bloomberg Business Week has dismissed as a scam, one of the biggest scams ever. Many concerned Nigerians have said, look, Nigeria cannot pay this because it's a fraudulent transaction, not in Nigeria's interest. But many people do not understand the technical side of it.
Yes.
And you are a mechanical engineer, you've been in all the big positions. What exactly are the technical details? What is wet gas? What is lean gas? You know, what is the connection with power? Yeah. And, you know, why is a pipeline such a big issue in all of this? If you can just help us break down the technicalities.
Yeah. Thank you very much. If we are focusing on that particular project, we're looking at a situation where the company, P&ID, says it would take wet gas from ADAX or OML 123 or whatever. What is wet gas? In any oil-producing operation, you're not only producing oil, you're also producing gas. There's gas with it. There must be gas coming out with the oil. Now, if you are in a situation where you can't do anything with the gas, which is called associated gas because it is associated with crude oil, then you have to flare it. The primary mission for the drilling is to drill for oil. So the wet, that is the wet gas now that is coming associated with oil. Now that wet gas cannot be used as is until it is, well, it undergoes some kind of processing. It comes with a little bit of water and other particulates. So it's called wet gas at that point. And at the point of production, if you're going to use the gas for something else, you have to remove all the particulates, the water and all the things you don't need. So that is your origin of the wet gas. Wet gas originates from the oil field. So at that point, if you're now going to use the gas, if you're not flaring it and you're going to use it for energy, petrochemicals, and so on, you now have to process it. You have to remove not only the water, but also other, what I've called particulates. So when you now have a situation where P&ID says they want to execute this project, you now need a plant. You need a pipeline to take the gas to the plant. Now it's at that plant that this processing, further processing will take place. The first one would have taken place at the oil field, mainly water. But it is at the point of the plant that you now remove the other particulates. And that is where you now have what you call the natural gas liquids dropping off. Then you have the dry gas coming out. So you now have two, if you may call them, two components or two products. You have the natural gas, the dry gas, and then you have the NGLs, which is propane, butane, usually what we call LPG and so on.
And now you've given us an understanding of the subject matter.
Yes.
Let's look into the ways that GSPAs are drafted, negotiated, and executed. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said that the negotiations and the manner in which the agreements were signed with PNID showed that they were underhand vested interests. What is the customary way for these agreements to be negotiated and signed? And also the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, said that the fact that there were no IOCs or NNPC involved is also a red flag. Yeah. What is the customary situation?
Well, I don't think there is any customary process. It varies from project to project. At what point you actually go into a GSPA or a GSA. It depends on the project. In this particular case, one would think that some major parties were excluded from the process. For example, all I know about this, I've read from it's in the public domain, it's what I've read from the press. My understanding is that NNPC was excluded from this process initially. And NNPC is actually the owner of the gas. In joint venture oil, not joint venture, because ADAX is operating OML 123 as a service contractor. The OML belongs to NNPC. So all the gas produced in the OML belongs to NNPC. The contractor is there to produce oil. So the gas being flared in that field belongs to NNPC. So what one would have expected is that the MOU, the GSPA would have involved NNPC, who is an operator and owner of the product, and ADAX, who is the producer and the operator of that OML. So you would have thought that, first of all, there's the MOU stage, which is a stage in which you clarify what your objectives are and who will do what. And that, of course, now triggers a process of what I may call project development. You try to understand what the project is all about. What are you trying to achieve? What are the objectives? And so on and so forth. Then the GSPA is another level. At the level of the GSPA, you already have a customer. And you're negotiating with that customer the terms of the gas supply. In this case, they call it a gas supply and processing agreement. In some cases, it will be a gas supply and purchase agreement. But let's admit the processing, because they intend to process at the Calabar plant, right? So a GSPA is a detailed document because of the implications of the agreement. That is what the project owner or developer will take to the bank to say, we have guarantees that this project will be, implemented professionally, if you like. There are penalties involved, spelled out. There are, obligations of each party. For example, if I supply you gas and you don't take it, you'll pay. In the gas industry, there's something called take or pay. You take it. If you don't take it, you still pay. Because I'm here producing my gas, spending money in operations, and you have not taken it. So all those kind of fine details are incorporated in such agreements, including, for example, conditions precedent. That these conditions must be fulfilled before this agreement becomes operative. So that is the kind of detail that, would go into such a gas supply agreement. And in fact, until you take depending on the size of the project, until you take your final investment decision, that agreement is not operative, cannot be, implemented.
Doc, so just hold your thoughts a second. We're going to go on a very quick commercial break, and as soon as we're back, the conversation continues. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Horizon News. Still with us in the studio is Dr. Godswill Ihetu, a former Group Executive Director, Engineering and Technical, Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, etc. Thank you for being with us. So I wanted to ask you a question about your points of view based on the gas plant or gas processing plant that they wanted to bring in. If they had gone ahead with this project, is it something that would have significantly contributed to power in Nigeria? What are your thoughts?
Well, definitely. Again, from what one has read in the press, yes, indeed. The whole point was that they were going to take something like 400 million standard cubic feet of gas, and that would have been the capacity of the plant. And to put it in perspective, today the gas to power industry in Nigeria is taking something like 700 million scf. So that will have been a substantial injection of gas into the system. And of course, the plan was not only to sell the NGL, but of course to produce dry gas for power. And what they have said there is that they will have been able to provide enough gas for 2,000 mega. I mean, if you look at megawatts, if you look at what we are producing now, around 4,000, you can see that if that actually did happen, it will have impacted on our ability to provide electricity.
Well, Dr. Ihetu, let's move away slightly from PNID. Okay. NNPC released its June report just recently. Yeah. And one of the issues there is how pipeline vandalism and oil theft continue to constitute a problem in the oil and gas sector and the revenue stream of the NNPC. Is the problem of oil theft intractable? Is it not possible for us to prevent pipeline vandalism? Because almost every time, this is the same excuse that we get from the NNPC.
Well, the issue of pipeline vandalism goes so deep. I would even, first of all, talk about the issue of maintenance of the pipeline facilities. Any pipeline that you put in place has a right of way, which means you have something like 25 meters of right of way in which you put your pipeline. I happen to be one of the pioneers of the original products pipelines in this country. And you would have something like almost an expressway that you can drive on along the pipeline, which means that you can monitor what is going quite easily. You can see for miles, who is on the right of way. And the way that we achieved this was to make sure that we kept the right of way clear at all times. That means you have to cut the grass. Well, it's as basic as that, and make sure that it is motorable so that people can, in fact, drive on that right of way on inspection. Doing that will make sure that people do not interfere. But what is happening now is that over the years, there has been lack of maintenance of the right of ways. Right of ways have been overgrown with weed and with brush and with, in fact, people had built on the right of ways and so on. So it's not easy now to be able to to monitor what is going on there. We have had incidents where trucks, tanker trucks have moved into right-of-ways, covered by by all the bush around them, and they have continued their operations. They would, take products from the pipeline and drive away and come back for the next operation. So it's something that has to be tackled on that level. NNPC must provide enough support, and I'm talking of financial support, to their maintenance group to be able to keep the right-of-way clear. That is just one aspect of it. And from my experience, it is so important, it's so critical. Because if you don't do that, if you don't have access to a right-of-way, then you can't control vandalism. And we have pipelines from, Port Harcourt to Makurdi. We have pipelines from Warri to all the way to, Guzo even. And all the way to Maiduguri, Kaduna and Maiduguri. So you have a vast, area that you need to maintain. And if you don't, vandalism can occur at any of these points. Once the criminals or vandals have the ability to gain access to your right-of-way, they will, do what they are doing without anybody detecting.
Oh dear. Now we're all up in arms about the P&ID heist, the $9.6 billion. Yes. But let's talk about the reported $5 billion that has gone down the drain with the Brass LNG and OK LNG projects, or Lokola, in my native Ogun State, between Ogun State and Ondo State. Yes. What is the status of those projects, and why has so much money been wasted?
I think that's a subject that I cannot, how do I put it now, properly address, because people have talked about politics, people have talked about business environment. For example, in the OK LNG case, there were issues where investors withdrew because they were not happy with the arrangements, with the financing arrangements, or with the partnership with NNPC. In the case of Brass LNG, that is still being kept alive. There's still, Brass LNG is still there. But LNG projects are very complex in the sense that, first of all, you have to have a market. If you don't have a market, you don't have a project. Even if you have all the money, you must have a market. And you also have to structure your project in a way that it becomes attractive to financiers, because you cannot build that plant without external financing. And in the case of Nigeria LNG, well, the structure was developed over many years. It wasn't something that came about so easily. You recall that, maybe you won't recall that, the first LNG project, Bonny LNG, as it was called, in the prior to 1983, even 79, when the civilian government came in 79. That's Shagari's government. Yeah. Prior to that point, there was a Bonny LNG, which was frustrated because the operator, Phillips Petroleum, withdrew because the project was very ambitious. They wanted to build, so many trains. They wanted to buy so many ships. They wanted to buy. It was really a very ambitious project. So when the Shagari administration came and they said, NNPC was supposed to provide equity of 60% for the project, and we're talking about billions of dollars. And the government thought, no, we don't have this kind of money, so we cannot support it. And because the government was tardy in supporting, some of the original investors, Phillips Petroleum that I mentioned, who was supposed to be the operator, withdrew, and that project collapsed. So the current NLNG, which has been a success, was now reintroduced in 1984 when the present president came back as head of state, because he had been involved earlier on with this LNG project as Minister of Petroleum. So from 1984, it took from 1984 to 1989 before the Nigerian LNG company was incorporated. And this period was like a gestation period. Many people got involved in interministerial committees and all that. Quite a complex, series of events before the LNG company was formed. And by this time, the LNG company had assembled a good team of investors, Shell, Ajib, Total, and of course, NNPC itself. So any LNG project is complex. And even at that time, comparing it with the original project that failed, that project that failed wanted to have 6 trains. What NLNG had when it started was 2 trains because of the implications. And in any case, also, that first project wanted 60% for the government. So it was like a subsidiary of, it was going to be a subsidiary of NNPC with 60% participation. And the same error was nearly made in the NLNG that is successful now, because government started with 60%. But after a review, the investors and the financing community insisted that NNPC had to have a minority share in it. That's why NNPC now has 49%.
And why NNNG is successful.
And why NNNG is successful. Yes.
Just for the sake of time, I wanted to quickly just bring us back to PNID for a second. What countermeasures do you think the government should be taking on this case, if any? Because there have been allegations coming out from the presidency that they're looking to seize UK assets such as Bonga Southwest. We had Femi Adesina on the show yesterday. He said that he can't really comment on that, but discussions are going on. But what countermeasures do you think should be taken on this case if the judgment is upheld?
I think we're in the hands of the lawyers right now, and I'm not very familiar with the details of the arbitration process and all the things that have gone on before now, because that is also important. What did we do? Some names have been mentioned as having participated in the arbitration process and all of that. So $9 billion is a lot of money. $9 billion can build a brand new refinery, 400,000 barrels per day capacity. Dangote is going to spend $12 million on 650,000 barrel capacity refinery. So you begin to appreciate, the magnitude of what we're talking about, and. I think really it is now for the government to take action as a sovereign state. I don't think it should be left to lawyers.
Well, what is important is the national interest. It is good you brought up this issue about refineries. Mele Kyari, the current GMD of NNPC, is talking about getting the 4 refineries to work by 2023. But there's so much emphasis being put on Dangote refineries. Yes. Do you think that this optimism is well placed?
Well, the Dangote refinery is a private sector refinery. NNPC has 3 refineries, or maybe 4, that it owns and that has not been producing to capacity, that needs a lot of money to bring back to nameplate capacity.
Well, Doctor, thank you very much. We'll have to wrap it up at this point.
Thank you, Doctor.